Welcome back for another episode of the Victory Avenue podcast. It is episode 50. Can't believe we've done 50 of these already, but big milestone here. I'm joined by my co-host, Corey Douglas, and we're also joined by a very special guest, noted Mavs fan on Mavs Twitter, and I believe producer of the Old Man and the Three podcasts, hosted by JJ Redick. If you're a basketball fan, you've definitely heard that podcast before. It's one of my favorites. Thank you for doing this, Jason.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So, the timing of this worked out great. We got a little bit of Mavs news today. Maxi signed for an extension, 3 years, $33 million. But I didn't want to start there. I did want to start with Luka because he's a little busy over across the pond these days at EuroBasket. And my goodness, yesterday was quite the treat. I know it's not quite like, what we love to see in the NBA. We like seeing him do it in a Mavs uniform, but regardless of what uniform he's in, I sure love watching Luka play basketball. And man, that was an all-time nuclear performance for him yesterday. I'm sure you guys enjoyed his performance against France yesterday.
Oh yeah, big time. He's I weirdly find it almost more enjoyable to watch him for another team. Not that he's not fun watching him for ours, but he's such a performer. He's just always trying to like wow the audience. There's definitely that kind of motivation behind his game, and so when you have a vested interest in the results of the game, sometimes he'll do the step back, and you're like, no, like there are times we do that. But when he's doing that for a game that doesn't really matter to you, you're just like, yeah, heave away. So I've really enjoyed watching him play for EuroBasket. He seems really carefree, just fun, dominant. It's awesome.
Yeah, I know for me, I just enjoy seeing him play for his home country. And I know it's been a big, not a big conversation, but there has been some conversation about, how long can he do this for? And are the Mavs enjoying it? Or do you have to get to a point where you tell him to stop doing it? And I'm just like, no, you can't tell Luka to stop playing for his home country. He really enjoys it. He embraces it. And it's really nice to see, he embraces the crowd. He embraces his teammates. And I remember a conversation that he had last year before he came back about like one of the biggest things going into the Olympics for that Slovenia team was the team chemistry. And that was something that he said he wanted it to translate over to Dallas. And I would say off of Western Conference Finals runs, I think that kind of took place. And we saw his connection with Jason Kidd and, the rest of his teammates. So I think it's always cool to see him play basketball. And then, like Jason said, seeing it for a result that doesn't necessarily matter to you is a lot of fun. So, yeah, I definitely enjoyed it.
Definitely has that just FU killer mentality where he's like, I'm going to hit a dagger and then I'm going to laugh in your face afterward. And he did it in, I believe, Game 7 in the Suns. There were several points in Game 7 against the Suns where he was openly laughing as it was going on. And you kind of saw that a little bit yesterday, too, because I'm sure he had his poor performance in that semifinal in the Olympics last summer against France on his mind yesterday. And he went out there, and I believe it was the second most points ever scored in a EuroBasket game and the most in like 60 years. I believe he finished with like 47, 7, and 5. Yeah. 47 points especially in a FIBA game is even more impressive because points are really hard to come by. I mean, all these games are finishing in the 80s and the 90s when NBA games are in the hundreds, 110s, sometimes 120s. Yeah. So, yesterday was just a masterclass. And I think Rob Perez, I don't know if you guys follow him. I feel like he's a pretty popular guy on NBA Twitter. He was just saying like Rudy Gobert's got to be so sick of this shit because Luka he just finds him. If Rudy Gobert's on the same court as Luka, Luka just finds him, and he hit that ridiculous running to his left floater 3 at the end of the shot clock over Gobert, and then in crunch time he hit a dagger step back 3 over Gobert. It was just a lot. He was doing his thing and he was having a great time doing it.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm going to reference probably his episode on the Old Man of the Three multiple times this episode, but one of the things JJ had like always told me as like in his short stint of being his teammate was that he is just like a child. Like the way he loves basketball is almost childlike. He said that he has this like really, really, really genuine love for the game that is I think somewhat rare for superstars or whatever. And you can really, really see it coming out in the Euro and just how much he loves to play. He just strikes me as the kind of person that wouldn't know what to do with themselves if he wasn't playing. Or, he'll just start smoking hookah and that's about it. So I'm happy he's playing.
4 games.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really cool to, I don't know. It's awesome. And I'm sure there's some risk involved. And I know that there's a contingency of fans that are a little like, well, what if he gets burnt out by a certain time? But I don't know, man. He's still really, really, really young and he loves the game. And that's kind of what you want out of your superstar. So it's fine with me.
Yeah, I actually want to stay on that Old Man in the Three podcast that you guys did with Luka. Was there anything like either behind the scenes or on air that kind of caught you off guard with Luka? I don't know how familiar you were with him before that interview, but is there anything that kind of stuck out?
I was surprised so I did that Hallelujah song about him, and I was surprised like he remembered exactly who I was.
I forgot that was you. That's so funny. I forgot that was you.
And then he, but he's just like. He and JJ, I mean, for as short a time that they spent together, they have like this real like buddy cop kind of vibe to them. Like he's an old guy, Luka's young, and Luka's just like like constantly joking around, like so I don't know. I just kind of liked seeing that. He like doesn't seem to take himself that seriously, and it's funny. My favorite like part of that podcast. Is off of the sort of like how playful he is, was that at a certain point, I think Tommy, who's JJ's co-host, Tommy had said, hey, what you've had all these like amazing shots. You've had all of these game winners. You've had all of this and that. Like, what is the best shot you've ever hit? Like, what's the most meaningful shot you ever hit? And he sat there for a long time and he thought about it. And then he was like, in warm-ups, I like threw the ball way high in the air and I've been trying to hit this shot forever and I finally hit it. And JJ just sort of like looks at me behind the camera. She's like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like he just loves to put the ball in the hoop. And the funny sort of behind the scenes off of that was the people at the Mavericks were like, yeah, dude, like, cause he was pissed that no one filmed it. And he's like, yeah, we now have to make sure that somebody is filming all of his warm-up shots. Like it is like a requirement. And so I think that they literally have somebody like that. Just their whole job is to like make sure they film his warm-up shots, which is amazing.
Wow.
I like that just fits into his whole persona. And like, that was one of the things I really enjoyed in that interview that you guys did with him, where, you really got to see, because like he does seem to have a unique relationship with JJ, where JJ was in Dallas for a cup of coffee, but I mean they still seem to have an interesting type of bond. And yeah, I do remember the quote about JJ comparing it to like Luka at play. Like he's playing around. He's not like he's taking it seriously, but he's not I don't know. It just he has a whole different vibe than some of the other superstars around the NBA, and it's really interesting to see. And that was his first long form interview he'd ever done, so I was really pumped to get to see him kind of broken down in a longer interview versus just standard media availability. And that interview was a lot of fun. I that was the first thing I listened to that day. That was the first thing I did was I listened to it and made sure I got to hear it. It was really enjoyable. And now, Jason, you are one of the people that was very early on Luka. You're known for on your Ringer live. I believe it was on the Ringer live stream of the draft that night. Yeah. When they traded up for Luka, you could tell the story probably better than I did, than I am right now. But I believe there's a picture of you on his draft night with a cigar and the Mavs jersey, and you were early on this guy. A lot earlier. I knew he was going to be. I thought he was going to be good, but I wasn't quite as in on him as you appeared to have been.
Dude, it's like my. Honestly, I couldn't have called it any better. And there's a little bit of backstory to that too. I've been on the Bill Simmons podcast one time in my entire life. And when I went on there, he had a bunch of staffers come on and talk about like so he had a Magic fan come on first for 10 minutes. And then whatever. I can't remember the order, Sacramento, whatever. And I was meant to represent Dallas. And so he's like, so who would you take at this pick now that you're the fourth person? And I said, well, obviously I hope we trade for Luka. And Bill was really high on Luka too. And he's like, yeah. And then he goes, Mo Bamba. And I was like, well, if we can't have Luka, I would want Trae Young. And at the time, that was a little bit of a hot take. He was going to go high, but like the conventional wisdom of how high he should go was actually like, much different than what actually ended up happening. So I had said, if it's not Luka, I would like to have Trae, which also looks pretty good. And so that night, I don't know why we had no inkling that the Mavs were going to make that move. I just like bought a cigar before our draft thing. It was like, just in case they get Luka. And then I'm back in the control room. If you watch that video, like you can actually see me like very blurry jumping around in the control room. And then somebody's like, come on out. I come out, immediately high-fived Jonathan Tjarks and was like, we were just on so excited. And like, you could see other fans in there that are like, you're so annoying, like already, like it had been like 2 seconds and they were like, you're already the most obnoxious person we know. And then I was just like on cloud 9 that night. I was just like convinced he was going to be good, which is a really weird thing because there's still a lot of doubters out there, which seems silly now, but yeah, he's just freaking awesome to watch.
You called your shot. And by the way, real quick, Corey, before you hop in here, I do want to say that brief little sentence you said, that was a very good Bill Simmons impersonation you did there. That was very good.
No one does a good Bill Simmons, but a lot of people do a good like Cousin Sal doing Bill Simmons, and that's what I've got is I just mimic him. So yeah.
Yeah, that was you called your shot, man.
Yeah.
All right, so I shift gears just a little bit off of Luka and kind of shift it towards the Mavs offseason a little bit. Obviously, Jalen Brunson is now a New York Knick. I know you guys have had him on a couple of different times, including one time after he signed with the Knicks. So I guess with your Mavs fan brain or as a national producer of a podcast, I guess what were your thoughts on Jalen Brunson going to the Knicks, and then kind of what stood out in that conversation that you guys had with him after he went to the Knicks?
Yeah, I think, I have this belief that every fan should grow with each season. And I am in that boat. And it's so funny to look back right now in hindsight and say, well, yeah, it sucks that the Mavs lost Jalen Brunson. Same time, if you'd have told me this time last year that if we lost Jalen Brunson, it was going to be quite the blow, I would have been like, what happened? Like, what happened to our season? Because if you think back, like I went to my parents' house recently and they still have a magnet of last year's season on their fridge. And it was like Luka in the center, Tim Hardaway, and KP. And those were the only players that were on the scheduled magnet, and like Luka lost both of those dudes and they went to the Western Conference Finals. So I say all that to say, in terms of how I'm feeling about the season and losing him and everything like that, it's a big, like, I have no idea. I think the sample size for Jalen Brunson being awesome is really still kind of small. And I think that there's a lot that goes into how a guy could really go off in those circumstances. I like him. And when he's been on the pod a couple times, he's always been super kind and kind of just like a really humble, like tough person. And a part of me thinks that he went to New York just to simply like, I want a shot to see if I'm made of this, because he's been a part of winning basically his entire basketball playing life. But yeah, but at the same time, it kind of makes sense why he went off too. Like, we could be looking at this time next year and saying to ourselves, I'm glad we didn't pay him that much. Or we could be saying, dang it. Like, it really is, anything is possible in this sort of weird scenario. Because, when Luka's out, like, teams don't really know how to game plan. And like for the Mavericks, they're kind of tougher to game plan for. And I think that he really benefited from that. I hope it translates. when you're a starting point guard for a team and you're the centerpiece of a scouting report and all that other stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I have like a very I don't know feeling about it. It's like I understand why they didn't want to go all the way. I also kind of understand, you get the vibe from him when you listen to him, that it's like if they would have possibly offered him an extension sooner, like a lot of those extension talks are kind of just signs of good faith. And I think that him waiting around probably got under his skin a little bit too, which again, I understand. They only kind of reached out to him after he had sort of done what he had done. So I don't know. It was the classic, like, this is a business thing. The Mavs fans that are super upset with Jalen, I personally don't understand. I tweeted when he left, like, wish him luck, and got a lot of hate for that for some reason. But I don't know. I hope he does well. He's in New York, so it's quite the uphill battle. And then, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, I mean, I'm optimistic about the season, if you're asking. I think that Luka, I'm going on a tangent, but Luka talks all the time about how he wishes he had the sort of chemistry that he had on the Slovenia team or whatever. And I think that they're kind of building that. I think he really, really plays well when he has at least some sort of core. And the fact that they've kept some of that core together and not blown it up, I think we've seen season after season that core get better, even though they're not like the biggest names in the world. I also like the fact that Spencer's going to go through an entire training camp. I like that we're going to have Tim back. I love the Christian Wood thing. I love the draft. Like, I love all of those things. I'm of two minds, like, too. Like, there's a part of me that's like, you have Luka Doncic, like, do not do what the Cavs did the first time they had LeBron, please.
Right.
So there's a lot to go into it, but yeah. So I am trying to be a more calm fan, a more patient fan, and we will see what happens. How about that?
So one more Jalen Brunson thing, and then we'll get back to other offseason stuff that he did. I thought that tell me what kind of vibe you got from Jalen, because I really think he wanted to be in Dallas, and he said as much. And I do wonder, how much of a factor do you think his dad played, just in terms of having his ear a little bit, and also the fact that the Knicks hired his dad. I really think Jalen wanted to be in Dallas, and I do agree. I'm not one of the Mavs fans that's hating on Brunson and everything. I wish him luck. I think he made the incorrect decision in terms of basketball sense, but he's a grown man. He can do what he wants. He got paid. Congratulations to him. Yeah. But so that's kind of my stance on the whole thing. How much of a factor do you think his dad played in the whole situation?
Probably a decent amount, but I don't really fault him for that. I mean, he's clearly a big influence in his life. So the old man in three is coming back in a couple weeks, and we have pre-taped a few interviews. And in one of the interviews, JJ is talking about how every piece of advice he gives to every player is always take the most money. Like life is too short. Life is too weird to not. And there are too many cautionary tales of players that didn't take the money, and it kind of comes back to bite them. And so, yeah, I mean, he mentioned that in an interview they did with Matt Barnes. Matt Barnes was talking about how he took less money to go play on contenders a few years, and he kind of doesn't know if that's a lot of money you leave on the table. I don't know if Jalen Brunson, I know it's not like that much, but it's still we don't know how. Jalen Brunson has no idea how much money he's going to make in his career, and it was money matters. I don't know. I can't really fault him for that. I think the dad thing is probably the dad, if I were to guess, thinks his son is awesome and is the man. And my son is the worst athlete alive, and I think he's awesome and the man. You know what I mean? But it's just what you do, and so he thinks he's the man, and he's like, you could run New York. Imagine you get that opportunity. It's like I've talked about it with JJ before, about how if you win in New York, it's not like winning anywhere else. You are solidified, you are a legend. And it's an interesting gamble you want to take, especially just, again, I think that given the fact that Jalen, while he, in college had so much success and he was such a huge, huge part of it, I'm sure there's a lot of self-belief, which I don't really fault that. I'm a little with you probably, Nate. Like, I think, if he really cares about like legacy and all that other stuff, which he might not, then maybe, having this long standing partnership with Luka might benefit his long-term career. Yeah, but like, who knows? I think too, the one part that I'm going to miss the most out of him is I think his temperament was like perfect for Luka. Like, I think that is where Dallas is going to really like lose a little bit of just, I think he has like a legitimate leadership style that's much different than Luka's, and was good because I think that they both respected each other, but like he would let Luka spout off, like he would let him go off or whatever, and Jalen just always stayed focused, like emotionless almost. And I think that is a good counter to Luka, and not like this overly passionate sort of player that's next to him. So that's the part I think we're going to miss the most.
I also do think he saw the writing on the wall a little bit with, kind of the Jaylen Brown thing where, the Celtics were dangling Jaylen Brown out there for in the KD trades. And, he probably sees the writing on the wall where he's like, the Mavs next year get all their first round picks back. And they'll have a full arsenal of picks. Next summer, when the Mavs are going superstar hunting, I'm the first guy teams are going to ask for, plus the picks. So, I do also think that did play a factor with him, but
that just in general is a factor for any player, though. It's like the one thing that just drives me so crazy about fandom, and I used to be this way, but unfortunately, the closer you get to hearing these guys talk off camera and everything like that, the more you're kind of like, all right, I get it. It's like, this is such a business in a sense that like there is no actual loyalty except for to your guy. And the Mavs made it 1 billion% clear that Luka is their guy, as he should be. Same thing with like Milwaukee and Giannis and Denver and Jokic. It's like they have their guys. Everyone else is expendable if they don't do hit their expectations, hit their marks. And even then, they're still kind of expendable if somebody else better is available. There is no loyalty to this stuff, like, at all. And so it's just sort of like, to sort of like inject that into the conversation is a little like, I don't know. That's the part that I'm a little like, what are we talking about? The Mavs would trade Jalen Brunson in a heartbeat if they could get a better player. Like,
and the Knicks will too. It's like,
and then, yeah, exactly. And so if they will, then you might as well get a bag while you can.
Exactly. Well, I guess Nate touched on this a little bit earlier. The latest piece of news is the Mavericks signed Maxi to a 3-year, $33 million contract extension. He's entering the last year of his contract this year, I believe about $9 million. So what are your just thoughts on, Maxi coming back, and your thoughts on Maxi as a player? Or I guess staying around.
Sure. I have like a roller coaster relationship with Maxi. My closest friends they all text me when he goes off and stuff, because I think early on I wasn't a fan, but that all had to do with just how good looking the guy is. Like, I was just like, this pretty boy, get him out of here. I was like, we brought him in because he's from Würzburg. Dirk is gone, get him out. And but now he's like, he's pretty freaking awesome. And I was like, just wanted him to have like, have all the playing time in the world in the playoffs and all that other stuff. I'm happy with it. I mean, he's such a versatile kind of big. I think what I like about what that Mavs are doing with their roster is I feel like they're trying to make their defense a little more versatile. So you can play different styles of defense. That's kind of what it looks like they're trying to do, because with Powell sort of as a really focal point of that defense, it really limited what they were able to do. And so I like the fact that they can stretch if they need to. And then now with JaVale in, they can kind of play a different style if they need to as well. So I'm into it. I like the strategy. it's like so weird because it's like there was a point last season where I'd have been like, I will trade Maxi for a piece of like rock. I don't care
coming out of that
because
playoff series.
because he couldn't hit a shot. Like he went on that insane stretch where it was like, oh my gosh, he has like the yips or whatever
He's
you want to call it.
broken.
Yeah, and then he also won us several playoff games. Like he legitimately like was on fire, especially in that Utah series. So, you know, I like the strategy.
Yeah, he's I mean, in bird's eye view, he's a valuable bench piece and can sometimes start for you, who can guard 1 through 4, sometimes 5, and knock down threes. And for all the hand wringing about the Mavs roster, and they don't have a superstar for Luka and whatnot, Maxi's a valuable rotation piece. Maxi would be in the playoff or in like the because playoffs, the rotations get really tightened down. Maxi is a playoff rotation player on all 30 teams. A guy that can do what he does plays in the playoffs. And so, he gets a nice little raise, but still, I feel like if Maxi had hit the open market next summer, I think he might have gotten more than 11 million a year. So this seems like a value contract. He gets a nice little raise. Both sides get a little something. And, kind of like with the Jalen Brunson conversation, he remained like, you're keeping a nice little trade chip around too. I mean, he's a nice trade piece, like, if you're thinking really, really long term. And, you could say the same thing about Dorian Finney-Smith. Now, Dorian, I would be devastated if they trade.
If they trade Dorian, I'm like,
I love Dorian so much. He's just so.
I need a superstar back for Dorian. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I need 25 points a game back for Dorian.
Yeah,
fair. But point is, I adore Dorian so much. He's just a great story and a great dude. But kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about here, as we wrap this up, is discussion about future trades. I believe there was a report yesterday, I believe with McMahon and Zach Lowe, or it wasn't a report, but on the Low Post podcast, they were talking about how the Mavs aren't like going to be hunting, trying to get rid of they're trying to hold on to their first round picks right now to make sure that when the Knicks pick conveys next summer, they have their full arsenal of picks, and they're going to be really aggressive in trades next summer. I like that strategy. I'm fine with rolling with what they have now. I do think they need to figure out a way to maybe get another ball handler. I mean, I would give up a second for Mike Conley. I know Mike Conley seems a bit cooked, but they need to figure out something for another ball handler. As much as because if you look at the roster as a whole, it's basically subtract Jalen Brunson, add Christian Wood, Tim Hardaway. Maybe I'm forgetting somebody else, but that's basically what they're doing.
Jaden is going to play.
Yeah. I think Hardy is going to get some minutes, but I think they need to figure out a way to get another guy. But I think they need to do it without mortgaging anything for next summer, because I think next summer is when they're really going to go all in. Do you guys think the same thing?
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say I completely agree, and I kind of completely agree with the strategy, mainly because a lot of the dudes that you're talking about have a lot of upside. Maybe not Tim Hardaway, but I really like Hardy, and I could totally see him kind of going off. I could see Christian Wood also taking a big leap, and so those are also dudes that are on, obviously favorable contracts. Obviously, if they have that much upside, they are just another piece that you can deal. And so this sort of strategy of building your roster in a way that a lot of things are malleable and a lot of things have upside. I think that's smart heading into next summer. So that's why I'm really not that upset about this offseason. I think it's, I think it's one of those weird things where all anyone wanted was for the Mavericks to win a playoff series, and then they went to the Western Conference Finals. It feels like we jumped a year by accident. And so I'm actually like, you got to kind of be content as a fan as to where the team is right now.
Yeah, and I'm just going to pretty much echo what you guys are saying, in that I like what they did with the roster overall during this offseason. Obviously, I think there's still a need for another ball handler, but I think that's something that can be addressed at some point during the offseason or during the end season before the trade deadline, because I think there's going to be teams trying to position themselves to get a really high draft pick in this upcoming strong draft. So I think the Mavs will strike when that opportunity comes. So I think as far as going into the season, when it starts next month in October, I think we're in really good position to win a lot of regular season games. And then I think they'll be in better position come playoff time once, we see what kind of happens before the trade deadline.
Yeah. And I think they're going to be contenders next year, but I think they're kind of going to be in the same spot that they were last year going into the playoffs, where it's like, oh yeah, they're a top 4 or 5 team in the West and they can make some noise, but I don't think they're quite on that like elite level. And no. That's fine because everyone's freaking out about this offseason. Like, oh, Nico needs to go get somebody. I'm like, with what? There's no cap space.
No, there's nothing. And
like there was nothing they could do. Like it was, it was kind of re-sign Jalen Brunson and use the mid-level. I think it was the mid-level exception on JaVale McGee. Like there wasn't a lot they could have done there. So
no, and the West is like way more stacked than it is last season. Right now with Denver healthy and with the Clippers healthy. I like, for whatever reason in the discourse, it feels like a lot of people are just sort of weirdly overlooking the Suns, who I still think are pretty awesome. And then obviously the Warriors and. I think that Dallas benefited a lot last year from some teams being hurt, which happens in basketball. It's a lot of luck that has to go into any team sort of advancing the way that they did. And so, I don't know. I don't think there's just because we're, the Mavericks made the Western Conference Finals doesn't mean that they need to panic and try to do something right this second, because just not the right time for the team. I completely with you, Nate.
I think next off season's when they'll push their chips in. Do you guys got anything else, Corey, before we wrap this up?
I just want to end on something fun related to the Old Man and 3 podcast. Do you guys have or do you have like a favorite JJ Redick story working with him? Being with him for how many years have you been with him now?
Story. Give us a JJ story.
Oh man, what is my JJ story? I've never thought about what I would say about him publicly. I don't really have a one time. Well, I'll tell you that I really enjoyed. I beat him in Papa Shot, and I think it drove him a little crazy because he's a really competitive guy, and so that might have been my favorite JJ story. Was just I beat him in Papa, and then what happened was we played Golden Tee. And then I beat him in Golden Tee a couple times. And then he was like, Papa Shot. And I was like, I'm really good at Papa Shot. I'm warning you, I'm really good at Papa Shot. And he goes, I'm one of the greatest shooters of all time. Are you kidding me? And I was like, okay. And he's got a really nice form, but that kind of lets you down in Papa Shot because it's all about the flip. You got to flip it.
Yeah.
And then after that, he was like, skee ball. And so we went to skee ball. And then he finally beat me in skee ball. But that's probably my favorite. But honestly, my favorite thing in the world is if for some reason he and I wind up at like, because, we travel and stuff and we'll go to dinner. He's like the most fun person to talk to about sports because he's very introspective. He loves, he's like a very, very existential, deep guy. And sometimes I'm like, dude, you should pod about this. And so I love talking with him because we'll get into like multiple realities or like how, whatever. It's like within the conversation about basketball. So those are like my favorite moments with him. He's like an awesome dude to talk basketball with. Like it's so
he
fun.
seems very heady. Like that's part of why I like the podcast. Like he seems like I hear him ask questions to these players that like I wouldn't think to ask. Like he's that's why I love that podcast so much.
Well, it's returning. It's returning in a couple weeks, so please check it out.
You don't have to tell me twice. I'll absolutely be tuned in.
And I know you teased a big guest that you guys have coming up on the debut, so I'm excited to see who it is. So I'm excited.
Can't say, but it's gonna be great.
Awesome.
You won't miss it. You won't miss it.
I'm really excited to hear that, and I'm really excited. When we were DMing back and forth, you were saying, we took some time off and we're figuring some stuff out, but it's about to come back. I was like, thank God, because I'm a big fan. But
great.
Thank you so much for doing this, Jason. This was a blast. I got to talk a lot of Mavs, got to talk a lot of Luka, and it's never a bad day if you get to do that. So Thank you so much for doing this. And then before we go, make sure to check out everything we got going on at the Dallas Sports Fanatic. Check out our Cowboys coverage. Check out Corey and I's Dallas Cowboys podcast, the Silver and Blue podcast. Check out all of our content going on the site. Make sure to follow us. Follow me at Nate_Sanch77, Corey at the Mr. Douglas, and make sure to follow all of our DSF social media. So again, thank you so much for doing this, Jason. This was a blast. And we will talk to you next time on the Victory Avenue podcast.
Thanks, Joe.
Cool.